just recalibrating your innings and how you were able to get to that landmark, your best test score, first class score as well. At 72 for 4 when you joined Shea, what were your thoughts initially?
Thoughts initially were just pretty much to bat as long as possible, take the game as deep as possible. When I went out there with Shea, he kind of brought down the game to me, and it was just about getting through that period in the evening, and then obviously, rethink. When we got back to the hotel, we talked about it a bit, and then obviously in the morning, we would have gone and just be patient, and then pretty much take the game as deep as possible, like I said at the start.
Yeah, at the close of the day's play, I think we were 212
Yep.
for 4. Still another 330 runs to get, basically.
hmm
Shea was set, lost Shea within that first hour, and Tevin as well within that first hour. Almost changed from what was discussed in the team meeting or overnight to what was in front of us, given that it was Kemar to come on the borders.
Yeah, it was difficult. Obviously, we wanted to win the game up front with Shea and I, and then it obviously losing Shea and then in Black in pretty quick succession. When Kemar came to the crease, it was still about being as positive as we can and take the game as deep as possible. Having to score at 3 runs and over for pretty much the whole day. But then it got pretty tight, obviously, and then thinking about who we had left in the back end, obviously didn't want to leave it till to the bowlers to really come and do the job, So I think in the end, a draw was a very good result for us.
Yeah. Your innings now. You had 100 against Bangladesh last year, just around this time. So basically, it's a year apart. I don't think it's difficult to choose which one you think is better given the context of the game. But the 200, how did you break it down to get each sector of your total?
Just a lot of patience, a lot of discipline, pretty much. Obviously not scoring in the first innings, and then going home and thinking about how both Tom Latham and Ratchin pretty much applied themselves on the pitch. I pretty much kind of took a page from their book. Each batter, Tom being as patient as he was, and then Ratchin, being able to execute his shots, and having lots of discussions with Shea. Like I said before, we've been pretty close since youth cricket days, and for me, just being patient, trusting myself, trusting my game, and just one ball at a time, process at a time.
Yeah, so many records stumbled in that innings. The bigger picture was that the West Indies avoided defeat. First time we've avoided defeat away in New Zealand since 2013. There were obviously a couple of bowlers down. Matt Henry, one of the top bowlers in the world. How did that really impact how you approach the innings? Because in the first innings, it seemed around for about 2.5 days, or the first half of the game. And the second innings, the second sector, the second portion of the game, it was a completely different surface where it eased off a bit. Their absence, did that make it a little easier, or it just made you had to concentrate a little bit?
For me, it's just about applying myself regardless of the situation, because they have world-class bowlers at the end of the day. Duffy bowled almost 60 overs in the game, and his pace didn't drop, his effort didn't drop. Zach Folks, even though he was young into Test cricket as well, those guys obviously put in a really, really massive effort for the team. So you still got to play each ball at a time, each ball at a time, and obviously not trying to get too far ahead of myself, thinking about no Nathan Smith or no Matt Henry. You still have to go and play each ball on its merit.
Yeah, you obviously have a dual role in the team as a all-rounder. Most back home would probably have you more as a batting all-rounder than the general public, given your exploits for the Leeward Islands Hurricanes over the last couple of seasons. How are you finding that role in international cricket? Because you started last year, 2024, away to Australia. You were
Yep.
part of a memorable series win, series
Draw.
tying draw. Went to Pakistan as well. How are you enjoying Test cricket over the last year?
Yeah, good fun. Obviously, it's a massive step up from first class cricket in the Caribbean. It's a lot more demanding, both physically and mentally. But this is where I always wanted to be. So, I had to change, the way I train, the way I go about my training, both strength and conditioning and skill wise. So, enjoying it, learning as I go along, and obviously if I can pick up some tips from, the other successful all-rounders around the world, when we play against them, I pretty much do that. So, I obviously lean on Jason Holder, who's been around with the T20 squad when I'm here in the T20 squad. I obviously drop him a few messages in terms of finding out what he has done to have the career he had in Test cricket so far, But, for me, it's obviously just, sticking to my process as long as possible and trusting my skill and trusting my belief.
Yeah, you mentioned changes in terms of your approach. Is there a specific thing that you did in terms of your strength and conditioning or your nutrition or anything like that?
Yeah, pretty much everything had to change because, it's not easy being on the road, different conditions. Obviously, when you're at home, it's pretty easy because pretty much all the conditions in the Caribbean, and then coming overseas, playing cricket in Australia, then to Pakistan, and here now in New Zealand, everything's obviously different. Each condition's different. So it's adapting to that. In the gym, getting stronger, eating better in terms of food, in terms of putting on a bit more muscle as well, and being a bit stronger. Skill-wise, adding a bit more to my game, batting. Being a bit more patient because at this level, you got to be patient at this level. Everything's not given to you. Bowling-wise, obviously being the all-rounder in the team, you can be bowling, and then within an hour or two, you could be batting again. So, it's about obviously putting your mind to it as well, and adapting to change.
Just a couple more on the game itself. Your partnerships with Shea and Kemar, what were the discussions like in that period?
Discussions with Shea is always pretty much the same thing. Be yourself, trust your skill, be patient. Like I said, I've been playing with Shea from under 11s, and all the discussions been pretty much the same. And with Kemar, the senior guy, he always keeps reiterating, stay hungry, always want more for yourself, and then just be you at the end of the day, because I don't think you can be anyone different. You just got to be yourself and trusting yourself.
And in terms of New Zealand, what do you expect for them to throw at us again for the second game? Different conditions, well, I'm saying different conditions, different ground, but you expect to see similar conditions in terms of grass-led surfaces and so on, sea movement earlier. And what is it that you expect, even though they're supposed to have a couple of changes in their squad?
Yeah, I think they're pretty much going to be the same conditions around New Zealand. In terms of the bowling, the effort that Duffy put on in the last game, I'm sure all the bowlers are pretty much the same. They never give up, and it's just adapting to each and every situation, making sure that we stick to our processes as a team, and continue to trust them. Bowling, I think we did really well in the bowling department. Having taken 20 wickets, 18 wickets, and with the two guys who come back. But for us as a bowling group, I think over the last couple series, I think we've done ourselves pretty good in that department. So just long may it continue.
Yeah, you basically went into where I was going to go finally. What is it that you want to see from the team based on the back of that performance with the resilience shown with the bat? A young bowling attack going into the second and third test.
Yeah, like you said, young bowling group. For us, one ball at a time. I think we can't think too far ahead. Obviously, we always talk about consistency and wanting to be better each and every single game. But once we go into the game and we have our plans, once we stick to them, once we trust them for as long as possible, and obviously being able to adapt if the situation does change. But for us as a bowling group, I think we've been doing pretty well, and kudos to both OJ Shields and Johan Lane. First test match for Shields, second test match for Lane. And, I think they did pretty well, held their own, even when the situations got tough. But, once the guys keep sticking to their guns and we continue to trust them and believe in them, I think we'll do well in the second test match as well.